Today we're going to talk about something that is often misunderstood, and it's a little bit more science-based. And honestly, it's something that might shift the way you think about diet foods altogether. Because most people believe that if something is low calorie, it's fine to have in exorbitant amounts. If it's 0 calorie, that it doesn't matter. But your body doesn't only respond to calories, it responds to hormones. And one of the most important hormones when it comes to fat loss is insulin. So I'm gonna break this down in a really simple way. Insulin is a hormone produced by your pancreas. Its primary role is to help regulate blood sugar in your body. So when you eat carbohydrates, they break down into glucose and they enter your bloodstream. Insulin is released to help move that glucose out of your bloodstream and into your cells to be used for energy or stored for later. So here's the key point you have to understand. Insulin is not just a blood sugar hormone, it is also a storage hormone. So when insulin is elevated, your body is in a fed storage state. So if you have enough glucose coming in through carbohydrates to feed your energy sources, your body will start to store it as fat. When your insulin is lower, your body is more capable of entering fat burning states because it's not storing the extra energy, it's starting to utilize it for energy. So before we go any further, I want to be very clear about something. Fat loss still comes down to a calorie deficit over time. That doesn't change. You cannot bypass energy balance in our body. But it's not as simple as just calories in and calories out, which is what the old science has told people. So I just want to make sure we understand that. Because what we're talking about today is what influences how your body responds in that deficit. Because not all inputs into the body are processed exactly the same way hormonally. And this is where artificial sweeteners come in. Things like diet sodas, 0-calorie syrups added to your coffee or your water, 0-sugar yogurts that have artificial sweeteners, low-calorie desserts, sweeteners in things like cottage cheeses and milks. On paper, those things sound like a great option because they get you the sweet taste without the calories. And from a calorie perspective alone, they can absolutely work. But here's where it gets more complex. Your body doesn't just respond to the calories, it also responds to the taste, the anticipation, the neurological signals. There's something called the cephalic phase insulin response. This is when your body begins releasing insulin before glucose even enters the bloodstream, simply in response to the taste or the expectation of the food that you're going to eat, especially if it's sweets. Some research actually suggests that certain artificial sweeteners may trigger a small insulin response in some individuals. Not always, not in everyone, but it can happen. And beyond insulin specifically, artificial sweeteners have also been shown in some studies to increase appetite in certain individuals, alter the gut microbiome composition, increase cravings of sweet foods, and disrupt your hunger and fullness signals. So let's talk about why this matters for fat loss. Now, here's the question. Does having a diet soda automatically stop fat loss? No, because it has 0 calories. But here's where this becomes relevant. If someone is tracking their macros, hitting their calories, hitting their steps, drinking enough water, working out consistently, and they still feel stuck, then we have to start looking at these smaller, more intricate variables. Because sometimes it's not the big rocks that are causing the problems. Sometimes it's all the little things that are adding up. So here's what I see a lot in this. Women will try to do everything right. They do the swap. They go regular soda to diet soda, full fat yogurt to sugar-free yogurt, dessert to low-calorie artificial sweetened dessert. And now they're consuming a lot of sweet flavors all day long, even if the calories are lower. But when your body is constantly exposed to sweet tastes, even if the calories are not aligned with it, it can increase your desire for more sweetness. It can keep your insulin signaling more frequently, and it can prevent satiety after meals. So even if the calories feel controlled and you're in a deficit, you might notice that you're always hungry, you're always thinking about more food, and you're always craving something sweet after every meal. And it's not a willpower issue, it's a physiological feedback loop that our body creates because you're telling it, I'm eating sweet things, even if the calories aren't associated with it. I want you to think about this as a simple analogy. Think of your body as a hybrid car. It can run off of gas, which are carbohydrates, or stored energy, which is body fat. So gas is the carbs, your stored energy or battery is your body fat. But here's the catch. It cannot efficiently burn the fat when insulin levels are elevated. So if insulin is constantly being triggered throughout the day, your body never fully switches into fat burning mode. Think about this. Have you ever had a diet soda and then suddenly afterwards you're craving something sweet, or you find yourself snacking more than usual? Remember, it's not a lack of discipline. It is your biology responding to mixed signals. And here's where the bigger issue is that I see for women. They are trying to be good. So they skip real sugar, avoid high calorie foods, and choose those low calorie options, but then they compensate by drinking multiple diet sodas a day, eating artificially sweet snacks, putting a bunch of artificial sweeteners into their coffee, and they're constantly chasing those sweet flavors. And that's what leads to that never satiated, always hungry, always thinking about food loop. And when insulin is constantly elevated, even in small spikes, it reduces our fat burning potential. It increases those hunger signals, and it makes it harder to tap into that stored fat. And over time, it can contribute to insulin resistance, which means that your body becomes less responsive to the insulin it actually needs, so it produces more of it. And now you're in a cycle where more insulin means more fat storage, and more fat storage means it's harder to lose fat later. So I have to be clear about this. This is not me saying that you can't ever have a diet soda again. This is not me saying you need to cut out everything overnight. What it is saying is if you're relying heavily on artificial sweeteners and your fat loss has stalled, it might be something worth looking into. And I'm guilty of this too. I have eaten a lot of things that have artificial sweeteners. I think about protein powders, protein bars, coffees with zero sugar syrups in them. I have a soda stream and I use Mios and I put those in my water every so often. I do like sparkling waters every now and then. I used to eat a lot of yogurts that had artificial sweeteners. I've made a conscious effort to try and minimize those things in my life though. So I will rarely have a diet soda. I have swapped all of my yogurts to full Greek yogurt with no flavorings. If I want to add flavor, I will add vanilla extract or just berries. And I do add artificial sweeteners to my coffee about once a day or a few times a week. And I use a minimal amount just to add a little bit of flavor. But other than that, I have minimized my artificial sweetener intake because I don't use protein powder anymore. I don't eat protein bars. I eat mainly whole foods on everything. So that has allowed me to minimize it. But again, I'm not going to demonize these foods, but if you are struggling with the fat loss and you feel like you are in a deficit, you are hitting your calories, you are getting your steps in, you're hitting your workouts and nothing's happening, then this is something to consider if you have a high artificial sweetener intake. So what I recommend is if you're struggling with those cravings and stalled progress, you reduce your frequency of those foods. Don't panic eliminate. You don't have to go from 4 diet sodas a day to 0, but slowly dwindle it off. Cut it down to maybe 1 a day and see how your body feels. I always recommend focusing on real foods first. Protein, fiber, whole foods. These are the foods that are going to stabilize your blood sugar. They are going to reduce cravings naturally. So that should always be the priority. We also want to use sweetness strategically and not consistently throughout the day. So we don't want to be starting our morning with a wildly artificially sweetened coffee and then roll directly into an artificially sweetened yogurt and then roll directly into lunch drinking a artificially sweetened Diet Coke and then top off dinner with artificially sweetened ice cream. We have to remember that if we can minimize the intake, it's going to reduce the insulin response. So if you could bring it down to, drinking your morning coffee with artificial sweeteners and then going on a quick walk. Great. And maybe dessert at the end of the night. You have dessert, go on a quick walk. Or maybe you do your Diet Coke in the middle of the day, go on a quick walk just to bring blood sugars down. But if you can minimize how much you're intaking, you might see a difference in your fat loss. We also have to pay attention to our hunger signals. If something is making us hungrier, it's not helping us. So if you notice every time you drink a Diet Coke in the middle of the day, immediately after you're craving chocolate, maybe it's time to curb that Diet Coke and get that out of your day. Because we have to remember that the goal here isn't perfection. Believe me, I would rather you drink a Diet Coke than a full sugar Coke if your goal is fat loss, because the full sugar Coke is going to solicit the insulin response and have the calories. So we have to remember that it's all about balance, but it's also about awareness. And a lot of women are stuck not because they're doing too little, but because they're unknowingly working against biology. So if you feel like you're eating low calorie, doing all the right things, but nothing is changing, take a step back and ask, am I constantly triggering my body to stay in insulin storage mode? Because fat loss isn't just about eating less, it's about creating an environment where our body feels safe enough to actually burn the fat. So sometimes it's not about doing more, it's about removing things that are quietly holding us back.